All right, welcome to episode 11 of the Our American Hoops podcast, what is also the very first live streamed episode on the Sports Fluent Media. Super pumped to be part of this program. And I'm joined by, as per usual, by my older brother, John Driscoll.
Hey, H, thanks for having us on. What an intro. Absolutely love the intro.
Absolutely, yeah. You can shout out to Tony from Sports Fluent Media. He's the CEO of this company for that. And then also, we would love to have our other younger brother, Matt Driscoll, on. However, he is being a typical college boy right now on spring break, so we're all very jealous of him. But he'll be on the next episode for sure. But to fill in, we do have our friend Peter Foreman filling in for him.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. We're all very excited for going live. We're excited for having you on. It's going to be a very great show. So to kick off the show, we're just going to talk about some current events just a little bit. More specifically, we'll be talking about the NBA standings in which they stand. So we'll start off with the Eastern Conference. So out east, or I shouldn't say out east because we're in East, but we have the Boston Celtics are at the top of the East. They have a commanding 8-game lead on the Milwaukee Bucks, who are in second place, who are 1 game ahead of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are 3.5 games ahead of the New York Knicks. So John and I have talked multiple times on the show about our fandom of the Boston Celtics. So John, want to start off talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics just kind of seem to be getting better. I think in years past with Tatum and Brown, with a Tatum and Brown-led Celtics team, you kind of sometimes would see them play down to their competition, maybe not take specific teams too seriously, and kind of choke those games away against teams that they should be, kicking ass up and down the floor. But I think this year they're kind of taking care of business the right way, no matter who they play. They kind of had I've been waiting for them to get to their easier part of their schedule, but it seems like play around the league has been very good. But even these games they're favored by double digits, they've been taking care of business, and that's good to see.
Yeah, we usually don't have 100% agree with all that said. And we usually don't have any unbiased hosts come on the show. We've had John, Matt, and we've also had our other friend John, the massive Knicks fan. However, Pete really doesn't really have a set fandom, so that's going to be very rare having an unbiased fan perspective coming in. So Pete, what are your thoughts? What are your unbiased thoughts on the Celtics this year?
So I mean, the Celtics right now, they're having an exceptional regular season. I think they're going to continue that into the playoffs. There's definitely still, a few things that worry me when it comes to them being able to win an NBA Finals. I mean, primarily it's just not necessarily the East, but what they're going to have to go up against within the West. Yeah, I mean, right now they're the clear top favorite of the East. Personally, they're not my favorite to win it all. But I'd be very, very surprised if they don't come out of the East this year.
Yeah, I would be too. They really got to win it this year. As much as we can say if they don't win, Tatum is only 26 years old, so they still have time. Windows in NBA franchises are always a lot smaller than they seem. So this has to be the year they win, and hopefully it is the year. But anyway, that leads me to my next discussion of if the Celtics are not. We shouldn't say like. So if the Celtics were to make the conference finals, who would pose the biggest threats to them? So Pete, who do you think out of the 3 other teams that I mentioned, who do you think would be would pose the biggest threats to the Celtics in the East?
Yeah, so I mean, once you get to the playoffs, I think it really comes down to superstars, and then role players are a little bit more secondary. So it's got to be the Bucks. I mean, Giannis and Damian Lillard. Those. And on the Cavs, it's all right. You got Donovan Mitchell, you got Mobley, who's good, you got Jared Allen, but Darius Garland. Donovan Mitchell's the only real, if you want to call him a superstar. And the Knicks, you got Jalen Brunson's really the only superstar. Julius Randle's a star, and he's hurt right now. Who knows what he's going to look like when he comes back? So I really think it's the Bucks.
Any takeaways, John?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Pete, especially the way they've been playing over the past 2 weeks. I think if you asked me this question a couple weeks ago, I probably would have, if you were to rank them, I might have even put the Knicks ahead of the Bucks just by how they were playing. And I think the Knicks, when they're healthy, they have like 10 guys that can crack a playoff roster essentially. So I do agree with Pete. I think the Bucks are the team that poses the most threat. I think that the Pat Bev addition, while we kind of trash him individually, I think that has helped them a little bit, just give them a little more fire and a little more grit on defense. But yeah, I would say the Bucks. The Knicks, unfortunately, a little banged up. We don't know when Julius Randle's coming back. I do think Jalen Brunson's a kind of a playoff accelerator. I think he gets better in the playoffs. And the Cavs, I think, just are a little too young. They've been doing a lot of good stuff this year, but maybe just a little too young to pose as a threat.
Yeah, absolutely agreed with everything said. And one thing we didn't mention is that a couple of days after Doc Rivers was hired, we were talking about it on the show about the potential changes that he could make, and he has been a massive asset since coming back. They had a very slow start. They were 3-7 to start, but however, they've been on fire since. I'm pretty sure they were like first and second in both offensive and defensive net rating with him coming back. I think the starting five of Giannis, Dame, Beasley, Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton has been the best starting five net rating in the league for the entire season, not only since Doc has started. So there's a lot to look forward to for the Bucks. Obviously, their main issues are can they succeed? Can they survive with non-Giannis minutes? They had a big win yesterday against the Clippers without Giannis, so that's a big plus for them. I would definitely take the Bucks over. Like I definitely think the Bucks are very, very solidly the second best team in the East this year, especially with the Cavs and the Knicks slowing down a little bit. The Knicks are a bit of a different story since both their second and third best players in Randle and OG Anunoby have been out for a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Knicks are like 12-2 with OG Anunoby, so that'll be a very interesting scenario when he comes back. But yeah, I would say Celtics 1, Bucks 2, and then 3 and 4 is like a toss up between the Knicks and the Cavs as of now. Obviously, we could talk about the Miami Heat being they're obviously big playoff risers as well. Not a big fan of the Heat, especially with their Celtics and the Heat rivalry. That's one thing I do appreciate though, is that one of the biggest complaints about the NBA today is that there are no rivalries anymore, but the Celtics and the Heat legitimately hate each other. So that's actually one thing that I do enjoy seeing. But yeah, so that's what we got for the East. But however, out West, the West is a bit more of a dogfight. There's really no sets number one. So the Wolves are currently number one in the West. It was the Thunder last night up until they lost to the Lakers. So the Wolves are up on the Thunder by half a game. They're also up on the Nuggets half a game. And then the Clippers are 3 games behind. There was a time where the four of them were tied together, but the Clippers have fallen off a little bit. But still, either way, I definitely think that they're just as competitors as the other four. So, John, who would you take in the West as of now?
It's a tough question. I think, when you look at the Western Conference standings as they stand today, it's Timberwolves, Thunder, and then Nuggets, Clippers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's kind of split up with these two young, really up-and-coming teams, and then your experienced veterans who do have playoff experience. So I tend to kind of lean more towards playoff experience with experienced veterans. So my pick would be the Nuggets. If you were to ask me who to pick out of the Timberwolves and Thunder, if they do square off, I'd probably lean more towards the Timberwolves just because I think they're so dominant offensively. But like you said, any of these 4 teams can come out of the West. My pick would just be the Nuggets just because they have best player in the world with that playoff and championship experience.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, don't want to agree on everything here, but I'm going with the Nuggets too. Like you said, John, the playoff inexperience from both the Thunder and the Timberwolves is what it primarily comes down to. And then there's 2 things with the Nuggets. 1, it's Jokic, enough said there. And 2, they have 3 guys in their starting lineup that are all 6'10" or taller Jokic can't move too well, but Michael Porter Jr., lockdown defender, knockdown 3-point shooter. Aaron Gordon, good athletic threat and a lockdown defender, can play inside, can play outside. And then obviously you got Jamal Murray. So just like the versatility of that starting lineup alone, along with the playoff experience, along with the fact that you're always going to have the best player on the court at all times, I would say that gives the Nuggets the definite edge. Out of those teams, who I think the Clippers have the best chance to challenge the Nuggets, just because you have Kawhi who's having a career year, which is for him saying a lot. As long as he can stay healthy, Paul George and James Harden, as long as all three of them can stay healthy, which I think is more likely this year than years prior, because they won't need to lean on any single one of them too much, because they can distribute it amongst the three. And then you have Ty Lue, who's one of the best coaches in the NBA. So they're a close number two, but I'm going with the best player on the court at all times, and that's Jokic.
Yeah, hard to disagree with anything said there. Yeah, I would definitely say it's the Celtics and the Nuggets that are the overwhelming favorites as of now. It's pretty hard not to take the Thunder. Oh, sorry, not pretty hard not to take the Nuggets. But that being said, my preseason picks were the Clippers. So I would I would lean the Clippers because as Jokic is the best player in the league. However, I do think that playoff Kawhi is also a different monster. Especially if you see him for a full playoff run, he'll be hard to stop. Which is something I really hope to see, because we've only seen Kawhi and Paul George past the first round once, I think, or like for a full series, I should say, and that was in the bubble. So which was obviously a disaster. But yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. That would be a very fun series. Kawhi versus Jokic again. It'd be like a rematch of the bubble. But as far as it goes for the other teams, the Thunder are an interesting team. They're again young and up and coming. They're very, very well balanced. They have Shea, who's an MVP candidate. They have Chet, who is already one of the better rim defenders in the league. He has hit a bit of a rookie wall, which is concerning. But that being said, his length and overall physical appearance, obviously, like, people were very concerned about his ability to stay healthy with how thin he is, but he's a much stronger now. I've been very impressed with him. Jalen Williams has been awesome as well. And yeah, they've just been a very, very fun team to watch. And probably the Timberwolves are the first seed. I think a lot of people don't believe in them because of their lack of offense. Anthony Edwards is really their only elite offensive piece. Even though Karl-Anthony Towns is a great 3-point shooter, he's not really an elite scorer. But yeah, they do have the best defense in the league. They have my boy Rudy Gobert. That's also Peter's favorite player as well. So, but yeah, even though he has a history of not really being able to guard the perimeter in the playoffs, I do think he'll be a little bit better at that this year, since he has such elite perimeter defense around him. But yeah, I don't really know if they would be able to compete. I think they can make a run to the finals, but everything would have to go well, and would have to have like an elite. An elite series, as well as it goes for the role players as well.
Chris, can I throw something in there?
Please do.
Because I'm happy you brought up the Gobert hate, because I'm I do not like him, and I know that since we're going to be talking about these teams, I know that Jokic has dominated Gobert every single time they play. So I was looking up stats, Jokic against Gobert. And since 2020, Jokic has scored 20 points or more. And out of the 11 times they played, every single game he scored 20 points. His highest was 47. He's never shot under 50%. Jesus. And he shot over 80% in 3 of those games. Also, in 5 of those games, he's had over 10 assists. So Rudy Gobert, I know you love him, but you put him up one-on-one against great players. He's a great rim protector. I'll give him that. But I mean, I know Jokic is the best, so it's hard to compare him. But like, if they face off against each other in the playoffs, I'd be. I think you're not going to stop Jokic there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to beat the Nuggets in another way besides stopping Jokic for sure. Yeah, and not the way that the Lakers did, where they just put an average defender in Riyad Murray on him, and then just called Anthony Davis a roamer, and then said they figured him out. So it's going to be a little more, going to probably be a little more than that. So you can't really turn Jokic into a scorer, because then he's the most efficient player in the league. But yeah, nobody's really figured out a way to stop this version of Jokic. So it'll be interesting to see what adjustments Chris Finch, Ty Lue, Thunder head coach, I forgot his name. It's coming to mind. I forgot his name, but whatever adjustments they might make. And yeah, I do think it's going to come down to those 4 teams in the conference finals. The Suns could put up a fight. The Pelicans are a team that I like. They've been up and coming. The Mavs, if Luka gets hot for a series, but we'll talk about him later. Yeah, but at the end of the day, I do think it's these 4 teams and then a big gap after that. So that'll be a very, very interesting thing to see. So, so that's our talk for the way the standings go. It feels like we talk about this every week, but it's also very important to talk about. But this new thing, it's something that we kind of talked about. There's actually something that John, Matt, and I talked about in our very first podcast together. That was about the MVP race. So, it's heated up. Obviously, the MVP race, as far as it goes, players competing with each other. There are currently 5 front runners, according to the NBA ladder. That it's been like the same 5 names that have been thrown around, and that those are Nikola Jokic, Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and Jason Tatum. So, Pete, if you had to vote today in the NBA MVP, who would you vote for?
It's definitely it's a really, really tight for me between Jokic and SGA. I mean, I know for a fact they are the 2 heavy favorites, and I think they're rightfully so the 2 heavy favorites. For me, to be honest, I haven't gotten the chance to watch too much of SGA, like just watching him, and I've seen highlights and whatnot, and I know what his stats are, but I haven't actually seen too much of it live action. So it's tough to judge, but right now I would still say Jokic. Like the one thing I heard, I was watching a game the other night, and one of the commentators, I think it was JJ Redick, was saying this. It was like, with Jokic on the floor, every single possession, you're gonna get a good shot. And there's probably 5 or 6 guys in the league, if that you can guarantee a great shot every single time they're on the court. And he's definitely one of those guys. And I think I don't think there's anyone that impacts the game as much as he does across the league. So he's definitely my pick. The only thing I could see is definitely some voter. I mean, I know SGA is having a fantastic season, and there's voter fatigue. You don't want to be picking Jokic, Embiid, Jokic. But that's who I would be picking.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Pete on the number 1 pick. I think Jokic is. I mean, he just does things that nobody's really been doing before, and he does it so consistently and quietly. So he would be my number 1 pick. However, for my number 2 slot, I'd probably put Giannis there. I think Giannis is somebody who may have had experienced voter fatigue in the past and a little bit this year. I mean, he's putting up the 30, 11, and 6 on a top team in the Eastern Conference. I think the SGA hype is a little overblown. I do think he deserves to be in the top 3, top 4 consideration for the award, but I think he becomes a little overrated by the media. And then, I mean, just to talk about the other guys, Luka and Tatum rounding out that top 5. I think the NBA ladder has it right with their top 5. Whether you want to put Luka and Tatum where you want to put them is up to you, but I don't know. I think that in terms of Luka, winning should be valued more. I think that he sometimes seems like a more efficient Russell Westbrook, prime Russell Westbrook, but he's ball dominant, and sometimes that doesn't really equate to wins. And I think there should be something to be said about Tatum being by far the best player on by far the best team in the league. But to sum up, it would be Jokic followed by Giannis.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like we're disagreeing a lot on the show so far, other than our Rudy Gobert banter. But yeah, I'm someone who's a big advanced stat guy. Like even if people not everyone loves advanced stats, I do. But even if you don't like advanced stats, I feel like it's pretty easy to pick Jokic, given the fact that he is he's putting up like the most efficient stats on one of the best teams in the league. He's one of the most efficient scorers. He's probably the best rebounder in the league. He's easily the best passing big in the league. I mean, you might even take away big out of that sentence. He might be the best passer in the league, unless you want to take out Luka in that sentence, maybe. But yeah, and as great as Jamal Murray is, he's a great player, but he's pretty inconsistent in the regular season. So that definitely helps his case, in my opinion. I'm someone who's been very critical of SGA through the years. I feel like he's always been just a little bit overrated. And part of that might be me underrating him a little bit, but I just feel like he's always been in conversations with guys that he's just not in yet. And that includes this year, where people are saying that he's already better than Tatum. He's on the same level as Giannis, and I just don't see it yet. I think that pretty much every player in NBA history has always been, oh, this player is extremely talented and he's great, but we just need to see him in the playoffs first. I feel like we're not really seeing that a ton with SGA, so that's my number one issue with him. There's also the issue of him kind of being reliant on the free throw line, which I know sounds like a casual take, but the reality of the situation is that every single player who's been very reliant on the free throw line usually ends up coming up short in the playoffs. That includes Jordan, who was very reliant towards the beginning of his career. But yeah, that's my take on SGA. Yeah, definitely agree with you on Giannis, John. And I actually brought this up on an episode a few weeks ago. I think it was an episode that I was just recording by myself. It almost feels like that Giannis is becoming like LeBron-esque in his prime, where everyone knew that he was the first or second best player in the league, but he just still wasn't really being like brought up in like hot takes or anything, just because everyone says like everyone's saying like, oh, he just dropped 35 and 12 last night on 60% efficiency. Oh, cool. Like and no one really talks about it anymore, and it's like we're numb to his greatness. Which, and again, part of that is because he struggled in the playoffs the past 2 years. But when a player is that dominant and he has shown that he can lead his team to a championship, I don't think there's really much you can you could scoff at there.
Yeah, 46 and 16 3 days ago, and I barely heard about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. So yeah, but then it comes down to Luka and Tatum as well. Yeah, the two of them faced off the other night. Luka obviously outplayed him in the first half, but however, and I know there's the whole joke on Twitter about, oh, Tatum could have 2 points in the first half, and then when his team is up, he finally scores a bunch of points in garbage time. While there's some truth to that, there's also the truth to when he needs to step up, he does. And it's almost, and I saw like a Celtics creator tweet out the other night. It was talking about how like Tatum has brought his game to like another level this year, where he will decide to go off when he needs to go off, and that included against there was a game against the Mavs, and it wasn't the Warriors game, it was another game, I forgot. It was recent though, where like they were up big, they started to choke it away a little bit, but then Tatum got hot and then put the game to bed. So, and we've seen that multiple times this year, which is going to be huge come playoff time if that's the case. So yeah, Jokic would be my easy number one. After that, it's 2, 3, 4 is actually like I would say the gap between 2 and 5 might be bigger than the gap between 1 and 2 in my opinion.
Gotcha. I'm curious. So do you right now? And I know we're talking like, would you rather Luka, but just strictly for MVP conversation, like theoretically, let's imagine our top two aren't there. Who would you have in front, Tatum or Luka right now?
For like in the playoffs or just in general?
No, just MVP. Like
MVP. MVP.
About the guys that are ahead of them.
Yeah, you're good.
So I'm curious with you guys being Celtics fans.
It's pretty. As much as I value winning, Luka does have him beat in most of the offensive stats. So we might give him to Luka there, but also at the end of the day, he's the 7th or the 8th seed, so he can't be too high on the list for me. So I don't know. It's tight, but maybe give the edge to Luka, but I don't know.
I think the way MVP is voted on now, the voters would give the edge to Luka because I feel like they value counting stats more than winning now. Overall, if you ask me, I'd say Tatum, biasly, of course. But I think that I just don't think the voters or the media really value defense as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and people I see on Twitter saying that Luka's really is improved his defense. I wholeheartedly disagree. I mean, you see clips of him. I mean, just lazy basketball back on defense. And this is totally aside from his offensive output, because I think he's, one of the best in the league at, putting up those counting stats. I mean, he puts up video game numbers, but I think that if you're going to talk about the most valuable player, defense has to come into the conversation. And I think Tatum's edge versus Luka defensively is greater than Luka's edge offensively.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I guess my only, me personally, it's very close, but I'd have Luka slightly ahead. And my thing is, what are the Mavericks without Luka versus what are the Celtics without Tatum? I think the Celtics without Tatum, I think they're still top 5 team in the East, maybe. I would give them that. Yeah, I think Jaylen Brown's good enough to carry them to top 5, maybe top 6 in the East. If you take Luka off of the Mavericks, it's Kyrie and Tim Hardaway, who's not playing very well right now. Like, you got no one else. So I think you got to take that
on
into
Derek Lively's name, Pete.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't.
But I think to me, like when I'm thinking about MVP, I'm thinking that's like at least what I'm thinking of is like you take them off of this team, how do they perform? But I understand like the defense totally matters. But if you take Luka off the Mavericks, they're at the bottom of the West, and I think the Celtics are still extremely competitive.
So my only pushback against that would be that Tatum really you want it's pretty tough. It's tough to be valuable when you have such a good team. Which yes, so so you want to talk about and this is a very flawed way of looking at it. But if you switch Tatum and Luka on the team, you want to talk about the Celtics? Like the Celtics would probably be just as good with Luka instead of Tatum. How much better can you be? You're 48-12 now, so I don't know. Like I don't think they'd get. Maybe they wouldn't. I don't know if they'd get worse. They'd get worse defensively for sure. How much would he elevate their game offensively? I don't know. Would they be better? Probably, but especially he might maybe make a little bit more. Tatum on the Mavs.
Probably similar stats, like probably in probably similar rank. I would put them similar.
Maybe a little bit worse offensively, but however, Tatum and Kyrie have played very, very well together. Outside of chemistry issues, that when the two of them were on together in 2019, they had like an unreal plus minus. I think it was about like +9 or something. They'd objectively be better defensively. Kyrie would have to be a better that point of attack defender. Actually, they probably switch up the starting lineup just a little bit, but yeah, it would be interesting. They'd be about the same. I don't think they'd be much worse than where they are now if the Mavs had Luka. The Mavs had Tatum instead of Luka.
Just goes to show you how close it really is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I know a lot of people on TikTok who are also me on the channel would disagree with that, but however, like again, the Celtics are so good and part of that because of Tatum. People say, "Oh, take them off." Yeah, take them off, and they're a very good team. They're not one of the best teams in the league. In order to be great, you need great players. So that's my takeaway on that. But speaking of Luka, so Luka has been one of the hot topic of discussions for the past few days regarding how it's kind of been both sides. I feel like with Luka, it's kind of you love him or you hate him. I had Nick Mack of Fadeaway Worlds on on the show a few weeks ago. He's a big Luka fan, but yeah, and people ranked Luka differently. Some people think he's top 2. Some people think he's scratching the top 10 surface. So that's what we're going to talk about now. We're just going to go through, and this is a very typical podcast segment. We're just going to go through different players in the NBA, ask them, would you take Luka or would you take this following player? And and some players we'll talk deeply about. Some players we won't really get into at all because it's not really too big of a discussion. But yeah, so to start off, so would you rather Luka Doncic? First one, Steph Curry.
Pete, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'm taking Curry. I think, ISO ball, Luka's, he's probably the best player in the NBA, ISO ball, but, I'm assuming we're talking playoffs here and, to take your team to a championship. And even still right now, even though the Warriors aren't as good as, obviously where they've been historically, the thing with Curry is, John said it before, you don't win in the playoffs in ISO ball, and Curry's not just the best shooter, he's probably the best, if not one of the best off-ball players in the entire NBA. And I do think that is important and, doesn't show enough in the regular season, but when the game slows down and you get into your half-court sets, it does show in the postseason. And for that reason, they're both a liability on defense. So there's not really much give or take there. For that reason, I'm going Curry.
Yeah, I agree with Pete. Just purely based on experience, playoff success. I'd take Curry over Luka.
Yeah, not much of a discussion there. I'm someone who didn't really. I'm someone who wasn't a big fan of Steph Curry this year. I'm a fan of him in general, but he wasn't really playing that well this year. But he's turned it around big time the past few weeks. And even when he was ice cold, I was saying, no matter what, come playoff time, I'm still taking Curry over just about anyone else in the league. Next man up, SGA.
John, you want to take this one?
Yeah, this was a really tough one for me. I think that there are kind of two things that go understated when discussing two players that I like to talk about a lot, and that's defense and playoff success. I think SGA obviously has the leg up defensively. I think he might be like 8th in defensive player of the year rankings right now. Tell me if I'm wrong on that, Chris, but definitely give the edge to SGA defensively. Playoff success, obviously Luka missed the playoffs last year, but he does have the edge over SGA in that regard. So honestly, I kind of put down earlier that I would have picked SGA, but right now I'm leaning more towards Luka, just because I need to see something from SGA in the playoffs. I mean, it's been relatively nothing, and this is kind of what has bothered me. I mean, all of us with the discourse around SGA, where other players are kind of held to a different standard. Where they call Tatum he choked in the finals, but SGA hasn't really sniffed the second round. So it kind of has to keep. I'd like it to be a set standard for that. So I'm going to lean Luka, but definitely subject to change if SGA has a good playoff run.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm actually gonna go SGA on this one. And to John's point, so I didn't really think about historic playoff success when given this answer, which you do make a very good point there. But I think defense is critical. And Chris, maybe I missed something, but I was looking up some stats earlier and just overall plus minus. So Tatum was number 1 in the league. Your boy Derek White was number 2 in the league. Jokic was 3 and SGA was 4. And I didn't see Luka on the list, and there's 25 people there. So I could be wrong. I might have missed him, but so that just goes to show that he's not playing good enough defense. And yeah, I do believe that, some guys in the NBA, it's just they're not going to try hard on defense until you get to the postseason, but you still have to show that you can do it, which he has never shown that you can do it. And meanwhile, you got SGA, who's leading the league in steals, if I'm not wrong. And great on-ball defender. So he's definitely not nearly as much of a creator on offense. He's just more of a pure scorer. But I would take that with the defense over what Luka gives you.
Yeah, I'm taking Luka pretty easily. Yeah, as much as I give the leg up to SGA on defense, I do think that I do trust Luka in the playoffs more. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day for me. Yeah, and yeah, as great as SGA has been this year, Luka has the track record, so I'm taking Luka relatively easily for me there. Next man up, LeBron James.
Oh,
someone else has got to take this one. I got to think this over now.
All right, I'll take it now. I think until LeBron James leaves the league, I'm taking LeBron. Granted, unless there's a huge fall off, I think they're relatively in the same area in the standings, and you could argue LeBron does have the better team. But I mean, one of the best players of all time, if not the best, depending on how you want to argue. I take LeBron just based off playoff success, experience, and yeah, that's mine. Luka obviously hasn't beat in a ton of the counting stats, but I think that has to do with a lot of usage rate stuff, and I would take LeBron.
This is a tough one because even when I was making my list beginning of the year, I was taking I took Luka overall because he's more available and he's much better offensively. Neither of them are good defensively anymore. So I give the leg up to Luka. However, the last time we saw LeBron in the playoffs, he dropped 40 in an elimination game. It's ridiculous. The guy is in his 21st season, and he's playing. I don't want to say the best basketball of his life because it's obviously not the best basketball. But he's playing. He's a top 10 player. And playing like this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I feel like this is almost hypocritical of me to say after my last answer, but I would actually take Luka here. And I remember like last year, I forget. I know you said LeBron had that like fantastic game 7. There's one game where I forget even what series it was, but I remember watching it. It was like he went off the game before and like put everything he had into it, and then the next game he was just gassed and couldn't really go as much as you would want him to go.
Right.
And I mean that's nothing against LeBron. He's 40 years old. Like it's gonna happen. So like when he wants to be the best, when he's physically fully 100%, and not just injury, but just overall stamina wise, he can still be a great defender. He can still dominate the game offensively. But you're seeing now he's not like that all the time anymore. So he has to kind of pick and choose when he decides to have that 40-point game. Or when he decides to have that incredible game 5 or 4, whatever game that was. I just remember it. Whereas Luka, he's going to drop 30 to 40 points a game and 10 to 15 assists every single time he's out there on the court. Yeah, he's a liability on defense, but like you said, Chris, LeBron isn't when he doesn't want to be, but nowadays he has to choose when and when he does not want to be. And that's why I'm going with Luka.
Yeah. All the great points there. Next up, LeBron's teammate Anthony Davis.
You can take that, Pete.
I'm going Luka. This one isn't too hard for me. AD not great on offense all the time, inconsistent. Luka.
Yeah, I agree. It's Luka, and I do like Anthony Davis. I think he's one of the most versatile defenders in the league. He's exciting, but like you said, inconsistent offensively, inconsistent with staying healthy. Yeah, I think it's Luka pretty easily.
Yeah. I think AD's the best excuse me. I think AD's the best defensive player in the league, but in the playoffs you need to be able to create your own shot, which AD isn't really great at, especially with LeBron off the floor. Got a few guys more up. Most of these we're going to fly by after that, but next one up, Devin Booker.
Yeah, I take Luka over Booker.
Mm-hmm.
I think Devin Booker's actually had a pretty solid season. He kind of shifted into that point guard role on the Suns with the addition of Bradley Beal. I know he's been a little banged up, and he also has Kevin Durant as his teammate, one of the best players in the league. But overall, I would take Luka.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Luka too. I love Devin Booker, and I love like the way he plays, and like how he still sticks to the mid range game, but at the same time, the mid range game is going away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I don't think he has enough firepower to keep up with where Luka's at offensively.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And next guy up, he's often put in the same sentence as Booker, Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell. I know we love him. Big Mets fan. We love that, but I think he's just a tier below Luka. It's just the way it is. He is similar, maybe a tick below Luka in terms of playoff success. But I think, he had a pretty tough playoff series last year against the Knicks, but I think it's Luka, and I didn't really give it too much of a second thought.
Yeah,
I'm not giving it a second thought. It's Luka. To me, Donovan Mitchell is slightly below where Devin Booker is. So.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And we got one more. We have a couple more guys after this, but one more guy in that tier. We got Anthony Edwards.
I'll take this one. I'm also going Luka. I wouldn't be surprised if my opinion changes after this playoffs. But right now I'm going Luka. I mean, Anthony's been great in the regular season, but you got to show he's had a few good playoff runs too, or had a few good playoff games. But you got to show some consistency over time. And, even though Luka didn't make it last year, when he's been in the playoffs, he's pretty much dominated against the Suns a couple of years back. Like he dominated that series. And you haven't seen that from Anthony Edwards. So yeah, Luka.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. And I do love the way Anthony Edwards plays basketball. I think he's one of the better two-way players in the league, and up and coming potential superstar. I don't think he's on that tier of Tatum, Luka, those guys yet. I think the playoff success needs to show. I think he just needs to get a little bit older. Obviously, he hasn't beat defensively, but I don't think it's enough. I think he needs a little more time. But like Pete said, it could change after this playoff run.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with everything you said there. Luka's just shown more, been there, done that more. So yeah, and definitely better shot creator. So these last four guys are going to be interesting ones for all of them having different reasons. Next guy up, we have a teammate of one talked earlier, Kevin Durant.
See, this is a really tough one for me. I think I've been a huge fan of Kevin Durant, one of the best, if not the best, pure scorers of all time. Just, all three levels efficiently, has the playoff success. But I do think that the past couple of years, he has not had excellent playoff runs like he has in years past. I think ever since his foot stepped over the line against the Bucks with the Nets, it's kind of been a little bit more downhill. He had a historical series, I'll give him that. But I don't think he's been held to the same standard that he was. And the past couple playoff runs, he got swept by the Celtics and Jason Tatum. I don't think people kind of talk about that enough.
Nope.
I think if you had looked at like a graph, you would see kind of Luka creeping up, Kevin Durant maybe slightly going down. But I think that's what makes this playoffs it's going to be so interesting. I saw a tweet the other day. I sent it to you, Chris. It's like the narratives after this playoff run, especially in the West, are going to be disgusting. There are implications. You know who's tweeted that?
Yeah, River Brown from Pick a Side podcast. Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Great tweet, because it's so true. I think that so many narratives are going to be pointed out depending on who wins this, 4 to 7 game series. I think honestly, I've kind of crapped on Luka a little bit this podcast, but I think I might take Luka.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say a bunch of bad things about Durant, or worse things to favor Luka over Durant, but overall I'm still going Durant. Like one of the things that the thing that Luka does better than anyone else except for maybe Jokic is he takes the shot that he wants to take. Like, it's not like, oh, there's someone contesting me, but I'm better than this player, so I can shoot over them. It's like, yeah, he does those step backs, but like that's a signature step back, and everything else is just so, smooth, and I feel like he's never forcing something that he doesn't want to do. And watching like Kevin Durant play and just, a few other people, they're fantastic. They're great at hitting very difficult shots, but I feel like they can't always get to the spot that they want to, or they're not always getting to the spot they want to, and taking those difficult shots. And when they're on, it doesn't matter. But when they're off, they're off. And I feel like with Kevin Durant, over the last 10 years, like he's always on. It's definitely dropped off, I think, slightly, not much. So, offensively, I'd much rather have Luka. But then when it comes down to it, Kevin Durant's still 7 feet tall and can move and can block shots. And that's why I'm still going with Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it's tough. For the first 42 minutes, I might take Luka neck and neck. But for the last 6 minutes of the game, I think I'm still taking Kevin Durant. And as long as those 42 minutes are going to be very close, if those last 6 minutes is what takes Durant over the edge, I might take Durant. But yeah, I'm going to say I'm taking Durant. Which maybe that's a little being a little too nostalgic there, but yeah, I'm still going to take Durant. We got 3 more guys. This next one up, John and I are huge fans of him, Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Which it's very tough to I shouldn't say very tough because he was still playing this year, but we haven't seen him playing a little bit. But I'll get my answer now. Yeah, I'm taking Luka very easily. Because for everything that we criticize Luka for, Embiid's better defensively, obviously. But yeah, come playoff time, who do I want with the ball in his hands? At the end of the game, it's Luka very, very easily. So I don't know what you think about that, Pete.
So I'm actually going with Embiid, and I'm going with him pretty easily. Well, one thing before, and it's always tough to say because we might not get the chance to see him in the playoffs this year. But the one thing like I noticed when watching the Sixers play a lot this year, kind of like I was saying about Luka, is like he takes the shots that he wants to and doesn't like allow the defense to dictate his shots. I noticed Embiid doing that a lot more this year. I think maybe bringing in Nick Nurse might have helped out a little bit, or letting Tyrese Maxey take on a bigger role and utilizing that pick and roll game a little bit more. Um, I mean, I think that's why statistically, up until he got hurt, he was having his best year ever, better than his MVP year, I think. Um, so with that being said, I would anticipate I would continue to see that in the playoffs and kind of seeing their play like a little bit more fluent. I know when they got beat, I think Celtics beat them last year, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and like there was times where he would get the ball at the 3-point line and like try to dribble drive past Embiid. It's like, or not Embiid, by Horford. It's like, dude, you're 7 feet, massive. Catch the ball on the low block, and if you can't get it on the low block, go set a screen for Tyrese Max so you can go do work. And I feel like we started to see that more this year with the Sixers. Um, so I think with the right coaching, like I'm going with them. I'm going with Embiid.
Yeah, it's funny when I initially looked at this, I picked Embiid, but the more I think about it, I think that the playoff success really plays a factor here. And I mean, we talk about defense. Joel Embiid's probably the second best rim protector in the league, arguably top 3, let's say. So he obviously clears them on defense, but like the way Joel Embiid plays the game, he's probably one of the better regular season players of all time. But we talked about players who rely on the free throw line. They sometimes struggle come playoff time. James Harden, Joel Embiid, potentially SGA. We don't know. I don't want to throw that out there yet, but I've seen it happen a lot. He doesn't have a memorable playoff moment. I think Luka has like 3 or 4. I mean, if you talk about the bubble, talk about the Suns game, I would lean slightly towards Luka, even though Joel blows him out defensively. I still would lean slightly towards Luka just because he does have a slight edge with playoff moments.
Whenever we bring up Embiid's playoff moments, I still think the most outrageous thing about him is that the best team that he's beats in the playoffs is the 5-seeded Toronto Raptors in 2022. That is just outrageous. That's the best team he's beaten, and and I know he hasn't had the best team, but that's the best team you can beat. That's really tough.
Yeah.
We got 2 more. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, we got 2 more guys. Second to last guy up, Kawhi Leonard. That's this one is one I was very interesting to see because the 2 of them have a history. Luka has played him twice in the playoffs. Luka played better than him in both playoff rounds, even though. Well, I don't know about that actually because Luka played better than him in 2021 in the bubble, I think. But then in 2021, when it went 7, it was tough because Luka put a better counting stats, but at the end of the games, Kawhi was targeting Luka, and Luka was drawing screens away from Kawhi. So, Kawhi's back to playing like an all defensive player this year, and also playing a lead on offense. So, I would probably take Kawhi, but this is another one this one's much closer to me than the Embiid one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that Kawhi is such a difficult player to rank because, I mean, before this regular season, I mean, he's having a great regular season this year, but before this regular season, it was almost like he wasn't taking it seriously. That very well could have been because of injuries, but I guess the discourse around him was that he didn't really, give too much care to the regular season. But come playoff time, Kawhi's a top 5 player, in my opinion. Both sides of the ball, top 5, both sides of the ball. I think he's very versatile defensively, kind of unlocks, he's that mid-range is unguardable when he comes down the floor. I lean towards Kawhi because he does check the boxes of defense and postseason success. But like we talked about earlier, this playoff run is going to tell a lot of stories.
Yeah, I'm on board with Kawhi. As long as we're not taking injuries into consideration, I think it's Kawhi, and I hate saying it's not particularly close just because of the playoff success that Luka has shown that he's capable of. But again, just when it comes down to like, I really don't think that individualistic style of play where it's just, oh, let me go one-on-one. I mean, I know he's a great pick and roll player too. But I'd rather have someone where it's like, you get Luke or you get a Kawhi catching it in the mid post, and then someone has to come double, and then offense starts moving around. I don't think sticky play, which is kind of what Luka is. I mean, he said his highest usage rate in the NBA. I don't think that works in the playoffs, so I'm going with Kawhi.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and yeah, and I think that Kawhi also gets underrated as a scorer. He's massively strong. Like gets to his place when he needs to. Can back down pretty much any big in the league. Can shoot the 3 ball. He's like a flawless scorer to me. Last guy up, Jason Tatum.
Pete, you can take this to start.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Tatum on this one. It's pretty close for me. But he's shown he's a really tough one to judge because he's had great playoff moments and he's had pretty bad playoff moments. Like I think it was last year. Was it game 6 or game 7 where he like didn't have any points for the first 3 quarters, and then he just caught fire at the end of the game and like carried them in. Like I feel like that's the epitome of Jason Tatum's like playoff career. So the consistency isn't there, but he's been to the finals. He's carried his team to the Eastern Conference Finals nearly every year. He's been the star of the team. And again, defense does matter. So with all that being said, and also like the style of play, the ball doesn't just stick in his hands the entire possession. I'm going with Tatum, but it is pretty close for me.
Pete, I've always said so much ball, and I happen to agree. Obviously, I'm biased, of course, but I take Jason Tatum. Playoff success. You did mention a little inconsistency. That's absolutely true. I think that if you're not talking about the all-time greats, volume scorers sometimes do have that inconsistency. But this, I think he's taken a step up with his playmaking abilities. In years past, maybe when they would get to the playoffs and teams would throw doubles at him, he would get a little, shaky, or he wouldn't be as successful. But now he's looking to pass out of the doubles. He's doing a really good job at that. I take Jason Tatum over Luka.
Give me Jason Tatum, Christopher Tatum over Luka Doncic. Everything said. As much as I do think Luka is the better offensive player. I think that Tatum is a more polished offensive player. I think he's willing to pass it off to his teammates a little bit more. He doesn't really hold on to the ball for too long. And then of course at the end of games, if you need to get a bucket, you can pick either the two of them. But if you need to get a stop, you want Jason Tatum. So yeah, it's very biased, but this one is relatively easier to me. But anyway, that wraps up the show for tonight. Quick plugs before I head off. If you could follow this, any social medias by Sports Fluence. I think he's sports_fluent on every social media site on TikTok, Instagram, and X, as well as some of his YouTube accounts. This is one of the many shows that are going to be published on this account. I'm very excited to watch some of the other shows that are being published. Personally, you can follow me on all my other social medias. I'm All American Hooper on everything, on X, on Instagram, and TikTok. I also write for primetimesportstalk.com. This is also going to be uploaded to their website as well. You can check out some of my columns there as well. But John, Pete, thanks so much for coming on. And to everyone watching, thanks so much for tuning in live. And for those who didn't watch this live, thanks so much for doing that as well. And again, John, Pete, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, AH.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everyone.